I'm interested in how people feel.
About what?
About Russians. Right now, ordinary people.
To Russians or citizens?
About Russian citizens too.
Russians are citizens.
Well, technically, yes. So,
Russian citizens are seen as occupiers.
uh-huh.
You heard that and still.
So that's a bad thing, right?
Oh, are you saying that occupiers can be treated well?
Yes, you can, yes.
Mm-hmm. So how did your grandparents and great-grandparents behave towards the German occupiers?
The German occupiers killed people on national grounds. By the way, do you know what else happened in 41?
How did your grandparents and great-grandparents feel about the German occupiers when they, in 41?
It was awful. That's because the German occupiers killed people based on their nationality and ethnic background.
Oh, so there are occupiers who don't kill.
No, no, there are no occupiers who don't kill, but there are those who kill everyone and on national grounds.
Ah, so occupiers who kill on national grounds are to be treated badly, but an occupier who simply kills regardless of nationality is to be treated well. Did I understand your logic correctly?
Excuse me, can I?
Yes.
I wanted to ask, there was another fact from 41. Do you know what happened?
What?
The Act of Proclamation of the Ukrainian state was signed. Have you?
I know. So what?
And what does it say?
What does it say? That Ukrainian nationalists are hoping for the support of Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. But Adolf Hitler,
How did your grandmothers and grandfathers feel about the Nazi occupiers?
my grandfather, who was an officer of the Soviet army, passed away in 1939 as an invader because the Stalinist leadership had started a war with Finland. And so my grandfather, an officer of the Red Army, died as an invader. What do you have to say about that?
I have nothing to say.
No.
I didn't know him.
What does it matter if you knew my grandfather or not? My grandfather.
As an invader of Finnish territories.
Yes, absolutely. He was an officer in the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army. He was dispatched to conquer foreign territories.
And how do you.
From the Finnish perspective, was he an occupier or a liberator?
An occupier to the Finns?
How do you think the Finnish population treated him?
I question his treatment.
I asked the question. In your opinion, what was the Finnish population's attitude towards him?
Frankly, I don't give a damn how the Finns felt about him.
So,
How do you feel?
you may not care, but it matters to me. I hold my grandfather in high regard and respect. He was an officer who was carrying out a criminal order. He likely couldn't refuse to carry out such a criminal order, probably because he had been indoctrinated by communist propaganda.
Uh,
I look at him from his perspective. I consider him to be what's known as a combatant, which means a participant in hostilities. But I understand perfectly well that my grandfather was an occupier, and the Finns had every right to kill my grandfather, unfortunately.
well, I can understand that.
Let me take you back to your question. How can you possibly have a positive attitude towards an occupier?
Well, if the occupier doesn't just kill everyone left and right,
Also, if an armed individual violated the border of a sovereign state and came here, did he come here to plant flowers? Should he be welcomed with bread and salt?
no, well,
The general population is unaware. Hold on. The general population doesn't know if he arrived here.
the border guards
I'm asking you.
were waving their hands.
I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, but you're not letting me ask anything either.
Ah, then ask your question.
It's just when
Go on, please.
Ukrainian.
You will ask. Either I ask you a question or you ask me one.
All right, go ahead. Ask the question fine.
So then, how do you think the civilian population is supposed to differentiate between a good occupier and a bad one? The civilian population sees armed individuals entering their territory. The civilian population is uncertain whether these weapons will be indiscriminately deployed or if their use will be based on specific national grounds. How can the civilian population tell the difference between a good occupier who for some reason came to plant flowers with a weapon and a bad occupier who will execute people on national grounds? I'm asking you to answer that question.
Okay, when Russians crossed Ukraine's border,
No, you're not answering my question, you're just pushing your own narrative. And I would like for you to answer my question. I'm providing a real-world example here. I don't need a real example from you. How can the civilian population of any country, I'm not talking about Russians or Ukrainians here, but rather about the overall situation when armed individuals cross into another state's territory?
In any case, you should just stay home.
In any case, it's probably best to stay home. I fully agree with that point. What action should the armed forces of this country take, considering it was attacked by the armed forces of another nation? Should they greet the occupiers with flowers or fight them?
It truly depends on if a warning was issued and how many of those warnings were given.
What do you mean? Was there a warning? What international document, in your opinion, speaks of any warnings? There is a specific international document, a UN resolution known as 3314. Its third point outlines the precise definition of aggression. When an armed individual crosses a border, regardless of their intentions, whether they came to plant flowers or not, it's considered an act of military aggression. What should the armed forces of a state do when armed individuals enter its territory? Sit quietly and not make a move, like the civilian population, greet the occupiers with flowers, or fight the occupiers.
It depends on the situation.
Uh,
So,
so the armed forces of the Soviet Union. Wait,
no, 1 second, hold on.
the specifics I. No, I'll follow this logic through to its conclusion. In 1941, when the German Nazis attacked the Soviet Union, should the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army have simply observed the situation or repelled the aggression?
They assessed it and repelled aggression.
Ah, the officers assessed it, not the high command led by Stalin, but the local officers. Ah, and how did Stalin react? What was his assessment? Go on, describe the situation to me in practical terms, if you can.
He saw it and thought aggression must be repelled.
And he could have just said no?
Quite.
Quite possibly. Great. So why then did Stalin decide it was aggression?
Because several countries had been seized before that.
Why do you think he decided it was aggression?
Several countries had been seized before that.
The Germans advanced into the Soviet Union, crossing its border. When a nation's armed forces cross over its border into the territory of another country, the top military command makes a decision that this is aggression and it must be repelled, right? Or am I mistaken somewhere?
Okay, no, you're not mistaken. But can I ask a question now? Another question?
Now you've answered my questions, now ask yours.
But we're not military men, are we?
Ask it.
Are you a military man?
Ask it.
That is the question. Da.
What do you mean, military man? I'm a senior sergeant in the Soviet Army Reserve.
Okay. There. I wanted to ask how Ukrainian people feel about the Russian civilian population, but not towards the occupiers.
To civilians.
To Russians, yes, but not to. You were mainly just explaining to me about not carrying out military operations. Okay, certainly.
If the civilian population supports the aggression, if they support it by saying Crimea is ours, we were forced into this, we warned you beforehand, you bombed Donbass for 8 long years, then that's what you get. That civilian population is an accomplice of the occupier. If the civilian population says nothing and declares, I am neutral God, I'm exhausted by politics, I really don't want to get involved in this matter, but then forgets that this very same peaceful person pays taxes, they forget.
So people shouldn't pay taxes if they don't support it, if they...
Why are you interrupting me? I'm trying to.
Please, I'm just curious about this.
Well, an individual pays taxes. They might believe that politics has absolutely no bearing on them, yet they continue to pay taxes, including VAT, or value added tax, with every product they buy. Even if you don't pay taxes personally and attempt to avoid taxation, you still end up paying taxes when you shop, as value added tax is already incorporated into the product's price.
VAT, I get it.
Those taxes still fund an aggressive war. But if a peaceful Russian says, my government is in the wrong, it attacked another sovereign state, it committed aggression in accordance with Item 3 of UN Resolution 3314, then I understand that it is a serious violation of international law. This is like a normal and reasonable Russian, but there's one big but here. Should I finish or not?
Go on.
When Russia eventually loses this aggressive war, no one is going to ask the Russian population, did you support the war? Were you neutral? Did you support Ukraine? After its defeat in the war, the Russian Federation will pay reparations. And the reparations will be distributed among everyone, regardless of whether they supported the war, remained neutral, or offered any form of support to Ukraine. Economic responsibility will fall on all. I am finished. You may now comment on something or ask a question.
All right, thank you so much. I am still intrigued by how you expressed it, how you articulated it concerning the neutral population that pays taxes and purchases goods with VAT. So, if that segment of the population doesn't support the war, does that mean they shouldn't have to pay taxes or purchase goods?
They cannot simply avoid paying taxes, and they must comprehend that just because I, as an ordinary citizen, choose not to involve myself in politics, it doesn't mean that politics won't involve itself with me.
I get that.
If you are citizens, let me finish my sentence, hold on.
Apologies.
If you are citizens and citizenship is a responsibility of the citizen to the state and the state to the citizen, a mutual responsibility, then it's a shared obligation. And if an individual overlooks this fact, that's really not good either. They are simply deceiving themselves. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Another question. 1 second. I'll try to phrase it better for myself. Uh, what if you just, put it in a way that when Russia loses this aggressive war, there is that possibility that the other side, Ukraine, could also lose, right? Why not?
That's not really an option. I'll explain why. Because Russia, in fact, your only military assistance so far has been coming from Iran, specifically the Shahed 131 and Shahed 136 drones. You, along with your leadership and a portion of the population, are hoping India will somehow assist you, but no help is forthcoming. You're hoping China will come to your aid, but in reality, there's no assistance whatsoever. And apart from that, China's position is rather ambiguous. Ukraine, on the other hand, is receiving assistance from more than 50 countries around the world in terms of financial aid, armaments, provisions, and other necessities. Your war machine, no matter how powerful it may appear, is incapable of withstanding the high precision weaponry that the Ukrainian side is obtaining. You yourself lack such sophisticated high precision armaments, don't you? You had your Kinzhals that you boasted about and your calibers, but with the American Patriot system that we acquired, we have now learned to shoot them down effectively. For the last week, you've been bombing Kiev every single night with Kinzhals, calibers, and those K-101 guided and unguided aerial bombs. The destruction rate of your weapons by our air defense forces, well, it's virtually reaching 100% already.
Mhm.
And on the military theater of operations, you haven't really had any particular successes lately, apart from Bakhmut, which plays absolutely no strategic role whatsoever, and it took you 9 months to take it. You have nothing else. Thus, the support from nations worldwide, especially those possessing high precision weaponry, provides us with the hope and assurance that we will prevail in this conflict.
All right. So, moving on to the next question. Well, let's just say it's good that you are so confident. However, if we were to entertain the possibility, despite everything, that Russia could still emerge victorious, i- the money provided by other countries to support Ukraine's military isn't just given away. It's not a gift, it's a debt. So, who will actually pay back the debt then? I mean, with Russia, it's very clear. Russia will pay reparations.
Starting from the end, now. If you were to win, well, then the nation of Ukraine will very probably cease to exist entirely as a result of that, meaning there won't be any debts at all and literally nobody left to repay them. That's the first thing to consider.
But what happens if it somehow manages to remain an independent state?
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. You just mentioned, let's discuss the probability of Russia's victory. So I'm genuinely interested in knowing what you mean when you speak of Russia's victory. What precisely does a Russian triumph truly signify for you? What has to happen on Ukrainian territory for you to say that you've defeated the Russians?
Well, first of all, I'm not in charge. I can't say.
I'm asking for your thoughts, not the thoughts of your leadership. I made a point of emphasizing that.
All right. Uh, for me, I suppose it's uh, mm, getting rid of the Nazi regiments, demilitarization, and I suppose that's pretty much everything.
Therefore, to liberate Ukraine, as you mentioned, from its Nazi regiments and accomplish demilitarization, you will need to advance to a certain territorial line. You have to capture Kiev, you have to capture the entire territory of Ukraine. From a territorial standpoint, what would need to occur for you to confidently declare, yes, that's a clear victory for my army?
Well, Kiev, then,
Kiev
it would have to be.
captured. So, are there any prerequisites or indicators now that Kiev can indeed be captured? If you are the second best army in the world, and you boast about your army being the second best in the world, we can even concede that it's the top army globally. No problem at all. Absolutely. What are your chances of reaching Kiev, considering it took you 9 months to capture the town of Bakhmut, which had a population of around 70,000, a very small settlement by European standards? How long would it take for you to capture Kiev, a city of 2.5 million people? And for that to happen, you would also need to cross the Dnieper River. In your opinion, how much time should pass for that to be accomplished?
I believe it will take around another year and a half.
So you fought for a whole year for Bakhmut, and now you're going to spend another year and a half taking Kiev.
Possibly.
All right, fine. Let's say you take it.
I'm not an expert.
I understand, and I'll take your point. Let's say you successfully captured Kiev. What then? The fact that you'll supposedly carry out demilitarization, that part I can sort of understand. You will compel the Ukrainian leadership to cease their resistance, and you will seize all the equipment they provided to us. That much is perfectly understandable. But what exactly does it mean to destroy the Nazi regiments? What's not clear to me is, do you even understand the meaning of the word Nazism? Please give me the definition, or look it up online if you can.
I have the chance, but
Go ahead.
I'll just put it in my own words.
No, in your own words, you won't get it right.
You want me to read it from the internet specifically?
Exactly. Just choose any reliable source you prefer and read the definition of Nazism.
Okay, 1 second.
And then we can talk about denazification.
The most radical political movement that, under the slogan of fighting for the interests of the native nation, seeks by any means, up to and including terrorists, to seize power and completely eliminate opposition parties.
So, have political opposition groups been eliminated in Ukraine?
Not right now.
Then why are you saying we have Nazism?
That's it.
How? Impossible.
Because the ruling party essentially represents the interests of.
What's the name of the ruling party in Ukraine?
How should I know?
So, how can you, without even knowing the name of the ruling party, let alone reading its platform, claim that it's a Nazi party? Based on what exactly? Oh, I'm so sorry, dear, but in that case, you're just talking nonsense.
All right, all right.
Hey.
Could you possibly tell me more about the ruling party's platform?
The ruling party is called Servant of the People. Go to the official website of the Servant of the People ruling party. And if you find even one sentence in there that aligns with the principles of Nazi doctrine, then you'll have a point. But until then, you're merely a chatterbox.
Okay.
That's not okay.
All right, fine.
It is quite unacceptable. When someone, lacking even the most rudimentary information, attempts to defend their viewpoint, that simply won't work.
Okay, I'll educate myself. I'll look into it. But still, I didn't want to get into a political argument. I was primarily more interested in the attitude of civilians toward other civilians.
I explained it.
You explained it to me, I get it. But I'm saying that in order to talk.
You're likely an occupant. One last question, then you're free.
Okay.
Crimea?
Crimeans.
No further questions.
Okay.
Just a typical chatterbox and occupant.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me?
No, none at all. Good luck to you.
May you rest in pieces.
Thanks. Bye.
You're welcome. 6 feet of dirt is enough. And also for the occupants who think of themselves as a peaceful, neutral populace, the Crimeans and the people of Saratov. An occupant is identified by one simple question. Hey. What's up?
What can you discuss with fascists?
Oh, tell me about fascism in Ukraine. I'm listening.
You'll just switch.
Hell.
Or you'll start interrupting.
Go on. First, give me your definition of fascism. Let's do it step by step. Then, tell me.
Alright, step by step. First step, a Ukrainian.
No, define fascism.
Equals fascist.
Those are false statements, not arguments.
Well, there's your proof.
I see.
Did they kill little kids?
Who?
You fascists.
Russian troops in Chechnya, in Samashki, killed many Chechen children, remember?
Wait, is Chechnya Ukraine?
Do you remember that? Chechnya is part of Russia. Chechnya is part of Russia. Chechnya is part of Russia. I'm telling you this.
I'm on Ukraine.
I'm telling you Russians are fascists. You kill
What are we discussing?
fascism.
Wait, you asked me, what are you talking about?
About fascism.
Of Ukrainian fascists.
And I'm about Russian fascism. Remember Samashki?
I asked what you meant.
I'm asking you, the village of Samashki.
You asked me.
The village of Samashki in Chechnya, remember it. Zip it. I'm going to tell you about the village now, then I'll listen to you. You've got the fucking face, but Samashki village, remember how many kids? I'll speak now, then I'll hear you, you asshole. You won't listen, you'll just swear. No, I won't swear. The village of Samashki, remember it? If you don't interrupt, you horse's dick, I'll speak calmly. Hey, look, you're the horse's dick, but that doesn't matter. I requested of you, if you don't interrupt me, I can assist you. I asked you to provide a definition of fascism, and then, in the subsequent stage, to demonstrate that precisely these characteristics of fascism are present in Ukraine. Let's begin. First inquiry. The initial query is the definition of fascism. Let's proceed. I'm answering your first question. Fascism's definition. A fascist is Ukrainian. Second, you didn't define fascism. I gave you a definition. I'll tell you why a Ukrainian is. No, first define fascism, then I'll explain why a Ukrainian is a fascist. After you give the definition of fascism, I'll gladly listen to you. I just told you. Don't you get it? You want me to give you the definition of fascism? Read it out? I know it. So go on, give it. I'm telling you, it's Ukrainian. Define fascism. Are you deaf or what? Give me the definition of fascism, damn it. A Ukrainian. Give the definition of fascism, and then I'll tell you. Fascism is a Russian, right? Right, that's right. Good job. And how Russian fascists killed children in the village of Samashki, in Chechnya. There's an example for you. Did they kill them? Little kids were killed in Donetsk. Were kids killed in Beslan? In Donetsk. Were little kids killed at the school in Beslan? I'm saying in Donetsk. Were they killed at the school? In Beslan, terrorists killed them. And the children. They weren't fascists, but terrorists. And in the village of Samashki, in Ukraine, they are fascists. I get it, since. There's a list of the children who died. All right, so I've muted you. Now zip it. If you can give me the definition of fascism, I'll unmute you. But not a single one has given a definition of fascism yet, and they never will, because it's purely propaganda. They know nothing but profanity.